What is the greatest gift you've ever received? Take a moment, think about it. Was it something wrapped in shiny paper, tied with a bow? Was it expensive, rare, something you couldn't afford yourself? Or was it something much deeper? A gift that touched your heart so powerfully that even after years you still carry the memory with you? You see, not all gifts come from money. Some of the most priceless gifts in this world come from sacrifice, from love, from giving up something precious so that someone else can feel happiness. And tonight, I want to share with you a timeless story. A story that has been told for more than a century, yet still feels as fresh and true as ever. It is the story of a young couple. Two ordinary people with very little in their pockets, but with hearts so rich, they taught the world the true meaning of giving. This is the story of Jim and Della, and the lesson they leave us with is one we should never forget, that the truest wealth in life is not in money, but in love, in sacrifice, and in selflessness. Let's step inside their home for a moment. It wasn't much. Just a small apartment, tucked away in the city. The walls were bare, the furniture old, and every corner seemed to whisper the story of struggle. A worn sofa, a little wooden table with scratches across its surface, a mirror that had seen better days. Money was always tight. Every coin mattered. Every purchase was carefully thought through, and yet, despite the simplicity, this home was filled with something far more precious than wealth. It was filled with love. Della, with her long, beautiful hair, and Jim, with his quiet strength and steady nature, were bound together by something unshakable. They didn't have riches, they didn't have luxuries, but what they had was each other, and that was enough. Like many young couples, their story began with hope. They met when times were easier, when love was fresh and dreams seemed endless. They would talk about the future, about building a life together, about the little house they hoped to own someday, about the family they longed to raise. But for now, life was about making ends meet. Every day was a test of patience and perseverance. Still, no matter how hard things became, Jim would look at Della with that same gentle smile. And Della, no matter how many sacrifices she made, would always remind Jim, as long as we have each other, we'll be okay. And maybe as you hear this, you remember a time in your own life. Maybe you too once lived in a small apartment, with just enough money to cover the bills and not much left for anything else. Maybe you remember the days when happiness wasn't found in what you owned, but in the person sitting across the table from you. Those were the days of simple meals, quiet nights, and dreams that felt bigger than your circumstances. Maybe you've been there too, living with little money, but with a heart overflowing with love. And it was in this little home, on a cold Christmas Eve, that Jim and Della faced a choice that would test just how far they were willing to go for love. On the little table in their apartment, Della spread out her savings. $1, And 87 cents. That was all. She counted once. She counted twice. She counted a third time. Still the same. $1. And 87 cents. And of that, 60 cents were in pennies she had saved one by one. From bargaining at the grocer, from skipping a meal, from stretching every coin as far as it would go. It was Christmas Eve. Tomorrow she wanted to give Jim a gift worthy of the love he had given her. But what could she buy with $1.87? Nothing, not even close. The thought broke her heart. Della sat quietly for a long while. Tears welled up in her eyes. She wasn't crying because she wanted jewels or fine things. She wasn't crying for herself at all. She cried because she had so much love to give and so little to show it with. It wasn't about the object. It wasn't about the money. It was about him. Her Jim. And she longed for a way, any way, to tell him through a gift just how much he meant to her. Have you ever felt that before? That burning wish to give your loved one more than what you can. That ache in your chest when you realize your wallet is thin, but your love is overflowing? Maybe it was for a parent, a child, a husband or wife you wanted so badly to show them, but all you had seemed too small. That was the weight Della carried on her shoulders that night, a weight heavier than any debt, the burden of love with no way to express it. And then, as her tears began to dry, a thought came to her, a daring, frightening thought. She had nothing in her pocket, but she still had one thing of value, something she treasured, something Jim adored, her hair. Della rose slowly from the table. Her eyes drifted to the mirror across the room. She stood there for a moment, staring at herself. And then, almost without realizing it, her hand lifted to her hair. Her beautiful, long hair. It tumbled past her shoulders, flowing like a river of chestnut brown, shining when the light touched it. Silky, thick, and soft. Her pride, her glory. Jim loved her hair. Whenever he returned from work, he would gently brush a strand away from her face and smile. And Della knew, if she cut it, she would lose not just her beauty, but something Jim cherished deeply. She hesitated. Could she really do this? Could she really give up her crown of glory for a gift that might not even be enough? Her heart trembled. Her hands shook. But then, she thought of Jim. She thought of his worn coat, his tired face after long hours of work, his quiet sacrifices that he never complained about. And she knew, yes, she could. Yes, she must. Before she could change her mind, Della tied up her hair, placed her hat over her head, and hurried out the door. The cold winter air bit at her cheeks, but her heart raced faster than her feet. Down the street she went, until she stood before a little shop. A shop with a sign that read, Madame Sofroni, hair goods of all kinds. Della took a deep breath and stepped inside. Madame Sofroni, the shopkeeper, looked at Della with sharp eyes. "Will you buy my hair?" Della asked softly. The woman came closer, lifted Della's long locks, and with no hesitation said, $20. Della nodded. And then, it happened. The sound of scissors filled the room. Each cut echoed like thunder in her heart. In a few moments, the floor was covered with strands of her glory. The hair she had cherished for years was gone. Sometimes, love asks us to give up the very things we treasure most. And that's never easy. But in sacrifice, there is beauty, and in sacrifice, there is love. Now I share the story of Jim's. While Della was making her choice, Jim was across the city, finishing another long day of work. The winter wind cut sharp against his face. His coat, thin and worn at the sleeves, did little to keep him warm. But Jim wasn't thinking about the cold. He was thinking about Della. Christmas was almost here. And more than anything, he wanted to give her a gift that would show her just how much she meant to him. Jim worked hard, every day, long hours for little pay. His hands were calloused, his body weary. Each week's wages seemed to disappear the moment he brought them home. Rent, food, the simplest of needs. Still, as he trudged through the day, he held one thought close to his heart. How can I surprise Della this Christmas? How can I give her something worthy of her love? He gazes at it with care. Jim owned very little, but he had one treasure, a pocket watch. Not just any watch. This one had belonged to his father, and before that, his grandfather. It was simple, yet elegant. The metal smooth from years of use, the ticking steady, like a heartbeat. Whenever Jim held it, he felt connected to his family, to his past, to the men who had carried it before him. It was more than just a watch. It was his heirloom, his pride. And yet, that night, as he thought of Della, an idea grew in his mind. She had always admired beautiful things, and Jim remembered her longing gaze whenever they passed by a shop window with a set of elegant combs made of fine tortoise shell, delicate and shining, made to adorn her long flowing hair. He had seen the way her eyes sparkled at them. He had seen the way she smiled, dreaming of the day she might own them. And in that moment, Jim knew what he must do. He walked into a small jeweler's shop, his hand clutching the watch tightly. "How much will you give me for this?" he asked. The jeweler examined it. $20, he replied. Jim hesitated, just for a second. This was the watch he had carried every day, the one linked to his father and grandfather. But then he thought of Della. He thought of her smile, her laughter, her love. And without another word, he placed the watch on the counter. Moments later, he left the shop with a small package in his hand. Inside it lay the gift he had dreamed of giving her, the combs, shining and perfect, ready for the woman he adored. Think about it for a moment. This man gave up his family heirloom, The one thing he valued most, just to see his wife smile. That is the measure of love. A love that sacrifices. A love that gives. A love that holds nothing back. Back in their little apartment, Della stood nervously by the window. Her hair, now cropped short, framed her face in uneven curls. She kept touching it, pulling at it, wondering what Jim would say. Would he still find her beautiful? Would he still smile at her the way he used to? In her hands she held a small box, wrapped as neatly as she could manage. Inside it lay the chain for Jim's watch, the gift she had sacrificed so much for. The door opened. Jim stepped in, his eyes falling on Della. For a moment he said nothing. He just stood there, staring at her short hair, as if he didn't recognize the woman before him. Della's heart sank. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Jim, don't look at me that way. I had my hair cut and sold it, because I couldn't have lived through Christmas without giving you a gift." Jim's silence was not anger, it was love, mixed with surprise, and something bittersweet. At last he reached into his pocket and pulled out a package of his own. "Della," he said softly, "nothing you could do would make me love you any less. But open this, and you'll understand why I looked at you so strangely." Her hands tremble as she lifts them, tears filling her eyes. She opened the box and gasped. There they were, the combs, the very same she had admired in the shop window time and time again. Beautiful, elegant, perfect, and now useless, because her hair, her glory, was gone. Then she holds out her own gift to Jim. Through her tears, Della smiled. "My hair will grow back, Jim," she whispered. "And until it does, these combs will remind me of your love." Then with trembling hands she offered him her gift, the chain, shining and simple. "Here, Jim, a chain for your watch. Now you'll never have to carry it on that old leather strap again." Then, with a small smile, he shakes his head and sits beside her. Jim looked at the chain, and then back at Della. Slowly he reached into his coat pocket, but it was empty. He had sold his watch to buy her the combs, and she had sold her hair to buy him the chain. Both gifts now seemed useless. And yet, in that moment, Jim and Della had given each other something priceless. Proof that their love was greater than any possession. The reflection and lesson. Some might say Jim and Della were foolish. Foolish to give up their greatest treasures, only to end up with gifts they could not use. But were they really foolish, or were they the wisest of all? For in giving away what they treasured most, they discovered the true measure of love. Not the combs, not the chain, not even the watch or the hair. The gift they truly gave each other was their hearts. In our own lives, we often measure gifts by money, by status, by how shiny or impressive they seem. But the real treasures are sacrifices. The nights you stayed awake to care for a sick child. The years you put aside your own dreams, so your family could have theirs. The comforts you quietly gave up, so your children, your spouse, your loved ones could have more. Those were gifts too. The kind that never lose their value. Maybe you remember the early days of your marriage, living with little money, but with a heart overflowing with love. Or maybe you think of the sacrifices you made as a parent, working long hours, saving every penny, so your children could live a better life. These are the gifts that don't sit on shelves or glitter under lights. They live in memories, in gratitude, in love that never fades. Jim and Della were called foolish, but in truth, they were the wisest of all. For the greatest gift they had was not a chain, not a comb, not even money. It was love itself. And that, dear friends, is the one gift that time can never take away. The closing message. So tonight, as you think about the gifts you've given and received in your own life, remember this: the most meaningful ones cannot be bought. They are found in sacrifice, in kindness, in selflessness. They live in the quiet moments when you give your time, your care, your love. Those are the gifts that last forever. The best gift is love.